Good to have you with us on this Monday edition, Ed Schultz News and Commentary. We're talking firearms today. It's been 4 years since Sandy Hook, and I think Sandy Hook probably got more attention, deservedly so, than any other mass shooting in America because of just how horrific it was to have young school children lying on a floor. And also the story behind the shooter, mentally ill, the access, poor parenting, the list goes on. And it brought this country to a point where we realize that there are just so many facets to this story and to this issue in a very, violent society that we live in. So today, for the first time in who knows how long, the United States Senate is voting on 4 measures dealing with gun control in this country, and it is long overdue. Now, this comes from Connecticut. It comes from New York, where they have stepped forward and put some measures on semi-automatic weapons. The United States Supreme Court's conservative court today saying that they are not going to take up a lower court's decision, that the laws that were passed in those 2 states are going to stand. And this really is a monumental decision by the Supreme Court. And the Second Amendment folks out there are just reeling in a big, big way today. Now, this deals with terrorism. This deals with being on a watch list. This deals with notification of who's trying to buy firearms. But whether we notice it or not, this is a sea change. The attitudes of Americans are finally reaching the floor of the United States Senate. And to explain more on that, let's turn to someone academic on all of this, is Katrina Vanden Heuvel, editor part owner of The Nation magazine. And Katrina, great to have you with us. I don't want to overstate this, but that's how I see it. I mean, what do you sense what's going on here?
I'm not an academic, Ed. I just sense that there is a sea change that's possible after the mass shooting in Orlando. Enough is enough, and I think you could see last week in a sign of a new, more radical politics when Paul Ryan, the Speaker, tried to hold this ritualistic moment of silence for the Orlando shooting victims. And yes, we all grieve. But there were those who said our silence does not honor the victims. A good representative whose district borders Newtown, Connecticut, Jim Himes, he said it mocks them. And Mark Pocan from Wisconsin called for a moment of action, not a moment of silence, and warned if Congress continues to fail to act, we will have blood on our hands. The same is true for all Americans who must now take our heartbreak and rage and start acting up. I think that the extremists, those who would mortgage the future of this country to their extremist politics, are losing ground. But Ed, I'm cautious because I feel that people are rising up, understanding that this can't continue. But we've seen it before. But I think it's important that you saw action with Chris Murphy, the senator from Connecticut, where the tragedy at Sandy Hook happened, that he took to the floor to filibuster, not to stop something, but to start something.
Yeah, it was a much different procedural use of that rule in the Senate than what we've seen the Republicans do over the last 7 years. There's no question about that. I just feel that there is somewhat of a sea change coming here. This is going to put immense pressure on the highest elected Republican in the country, and that's Paul Ryan, Speaker of the House. How is he going to respond to this? And this will define the conservatives and define the Republicans even further. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, we've seen how Paul Ryan defines things when he's twirling like a whirling dervish. I mean, he is not supporting someone who is a racist, yet he is supporting someone who's a racist, but he's not. So, I think what we need to see here is one sea change, Ed, is that we're witnessing a presidential campaign where the issue of gun control, of smart, common sense, humane measures is front and center, and we haven't seen that in a long time. And so that's important in terms of educating and talking to people. If it can get beyond them, there's so many in the media who are spewing misinformation, and certainly the presumptive Republican nominee is. But I think there is a real possibility that we see change.
Story today, Corey Lewandowski has been fired by Donald Trump as the campaign manager. Here's his response.
What happened? Why were you fired? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But what I know is what we've been able to achieve in this election cycle has been historic. We had a candidate who, in June of last year, announced he was going to run for president with no elective office experience, in a field of 16 other people in the race plus him, who's gone on to do something historic, which was get almost 14 million votes and fundamentally change the way people look at politics. And I'm proud to have been a small part of that. And running as the outsider of this campaign, which he has done, running against the corrupt Washington, D.C. establishment and political correctness, has been something I've been proud to be a part of. Things change as the campaign evolves, and a general election campaign against a very well-funded, giant organization like the Clinton campaign is very different than running against those smaller.
And Paul Manafort now is going to totally take charge of the Trump campaign. Is this a big development, Katrina? What do you make of this?
Well, I mean, I think the campaign has been in free fall. Trump has had, some 7 weeks to, quote, unite the party or pivot to the general election, and he's been a real sore winner. He's lashed out at everyone. He's occupied space with his attacks on judges, his threat to rule of law, his racism. So a lot of self-inflicted wounds. So this is a reset. We've seen it before. Standard political operating strategy, throw someone under the bus when things go bad. So I think the idea that there was sort of a battle inside the campaign about let Trump be Trump or he should become more presidential. I mean, this guy is going to keep running his own campaign. I'm not sure anyone can restrain him, Paul Manafort or anyone who's dealt with the campaign. So we'll see. I mean, I think the larger point, Ed, we can't lose sight of, is I keep going back to this. In many ways, Trump is not some wild outlier. He is embedded in a Republican Party, and he is merely saying aloud the kind of racist, xenophobic subtext of the past 40 years of dog whistle politics, from states' rights to complaints about reverse racism. So I think we got to keep focusing on how he's embedded in a party which has taken this country to extremes, damaging its true security.
I find it just staggering that 25% of voters are undecided right now. That's the latest CNBC poll. I don't know how accurate it is, but that seems like an inordinary high number. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people, it's hard to believe. I mean, small numbers of people vote in the primaries, many more in the general. People are tuning in.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe because Donald Trump's unfavorables, we can talk about Hillary Clinton's too, but his are the highest since such things were monitored, polled, surveyed. So I think what you're witnessing is every day he's alienating new groups of people. But, you also hear stories about people looking at him, maybe ready to support him, or supporting him and unwilling to tell pollsters they're supporting him, right? So I just think the electoral map, certainly for presidential, I never lose sight. I was at an interesting gathering on last Friday talking about what's going on in the states, which is pretty bleak for Democrats, for progressives at the state level, control of the state legislatures where so much politics is done and power is built. But electorally, presidentially, the map, I think, looks pretty bad for Donald Trump as long as Hillary Clinton continues with what Bernie Sanders drove into the presidential campaign and debate, populism, progressive populism. Don't go centrist. Don't triangulate, as they say. Have a bold economic agenda. Speak to people in those tough, hard-hit states like Ohio, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan. That will be critical.
Who do you think would be a good VP for Hillary Clinton? Who needs to be...
I like Sherrod Brown a lot. I like Sherrod Brown a lot. Ed, the problem is, as your listeners may know, because you've talked a lot about it, I'm sure, as the great political commentator you are, is you got a Republican governor in the state of Ohio where Sherrod Brown is senator. So that's problematic. I think he'd be very good. I personally, I admire Elizabeth Warren enormously. I think she's a unique, independent voice. I'd like to see her stay outside. She's going to be needed to build a progressive wing, to hold the White House accountable, whoever's in there. She's been important in that regard with the Obama White House on trade, on corporate accountability on Wall Street. So I'm not giving you a good answer, Ed. I'm thinking hard about it. But I'd like to see a progressive populist.
It is hard. There's a lot of options out there. There's no question about it. The Senate issue with Sherrod Brown certainly is something. I think he can win Ohio. I think that's very important. History tells us that. And the question is Donald Trump going to hurt the down ballot so much that they could actually lose a Senate seat in Ohio and still win the Senate majority?
It's very true. It's a lot to bank on, though, Ed, because what I'm hearing is the Koch brothers, for example, and their types. They're not into Donald Trump, as we know. They're pouring a lot of money into the states. They know the disastrous effect a Trump presidential ticket could have on down ballots. So they're doing a lot. Now, money isn't everything, but it's a hell of a lot in our political system until Bernie Sanders' system goes real national, goes state, goes local as a fundraising small donor system, which we need. But I do think, as I said, we've seen the real Donald Trump these last few weeks. It's all about him all the time. It's all about insults on him. He is the master of grievance, resentment politics. And I think he's also, even with the tension with the Republican Party, he is just saying out loud in a clearer, more vulgar, more brash way what Republican policies have been for millions of Americans in this country for too long.
You know, you and I, the last time we spoke, you talked about how Bernie Sanders had won the debate and the effect that he has had on politics throughout the country. I think you and I should celebrate what happened in the middle of the country over the weekend, and that is Jane Klebb from Bold, Nebraska, is now the Democratic Party chair in the state of Nebraska. And I think that the work that she's done on the Keystone XL pipeline and her advocacy work has made a lot of people wake up to see that, change politics can take place. So I just wanted to get your thoughts. I guess that's really an example of what can happen when you get people believing that a movement's real.
When you talk about what we aspire to as a people, as Democrats, as progressives, you get this thing. And Bernie Sanders spoke about transforming the Democratic Party. It's not tomorrow. It has to build, but Jane Klebb is very much part of it. We did a great piece about her a year or so ago. She's, really building great alliances in her state between farmers, between environmentalists. I think what she's also pointing to is ending this urban-rural divide. We need to come together. But Bernie Sanders, in talking to people and saying we can do better, we can be grassroots, we can build a different kind of party, has inspired many people. I was really inspired, Ed, by a New York Times that had to report on Sunday that Democrats are no longer talking about how to shave and trim Social Security. The debate is now how to expand it. And that is because of social movements that have pushed a media that wouldn't capitulate to this deficit mania, and to Sanders' campaign, and Senator Warren, who have driven that issue in the Senate and then into the grassroots of the campaign. And I took great heart from that, as I do from Jane Klebb as head of the party in Nebraska.
Katrina Vanden Heuvel, always great to visit. Appreciate your time so much. Editor, part owner of The Nation magazine here on Ed Schultz News and Commentary. Thanks, Katrina. Communication Workers of America, Alliance for American Manufacturing, BioGreen Clean, and the iSave team bring you this. We're right back.
Hey folks, you've heard me talk about BioGreen Clean. I'm going to show you right now on my airplane just how tough this is. I want you to keep in mind, chemical-free, 100% plant-derived, biodegradable. It is the safest cleaner that you can get, and it's the most effective. Go to our website, wegoted.com, or go to biogreenclean.com. www.biogreenclean and order today.
It's time to continue our conversation about mechanical insulation. Mechanical insulation is for the piping systems in our nation's commercial and industrial facilities. Facility owners are burning up billions of dollars through the lack of mechanical insulation on these piping systems. Call the iSave team. Insulation saves America valuable energy, and this team of energy conservation specialists is shovel-ready to save you money. Visit iSaveTeam.org to have a specialist give your plant an energy audit.
We perpetuate a culture of crime all the way from Wall Street right down to the main street in our hometowns.
It's worse than it has been since FDR took control of the problem and said we can't count on industry taking care of the American labor.
They probably have already engaged into some type of criminal cover-up.
And the law prohibits the government from even doing anything about it.
Catch America's lawyer Mike Papantonio on YouTube at youtube.com/GoLeftTV.
There is a company that runs a number of hospitals in Minneapolis. They are facing striking nurses this day for 7 days. Alien is the name of the company. And this is going to be very interesting because there's 4,800 nurses that have left the job, and these hospitals, of course, have named replacements. We're going to talk more about it tonight on the News with Ed, rtamerica.com, at 8 o'clock Eastern Time. But here's the sticking point, and if this isn't a middle-class issue or a union issue, I don't know what is. The company wants the nurses to opt out of the union health care package they claim would save the company $10 million a year. Now, this is a negotiated package, and the company wants them to opt out of that union negotiated package for health care and accept the company's offer for health care. This is what they're putting on the employees. The employees don't want anything to do with it, so they're walking out on strike for 7 days. It's interesting. It seems to me like they may not win anything in 7 days, but they're definitely going to get the attention of the public, and they're going to get the attention of the American people, which I think is really, really important. This is a true middle-class issue. This is an attack on workers. This is an attack on collective bargaining and any agreement that's already been put on paper. We're talking about it tonight. We're back tomorrow.